Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of the LCLC podcast. In this episode, my guest is noted EE Cummings scholar Gillian Huang-Tiller, a professor of English at the University of Virginia Wise. At the time of our conversation, Dr. Huang-Tiller was completing her book, Transforming Modernism, The Visual Poetics of EE Cummings, for University Press of Florida. She readily agreed to do the podcast because, like me, she wants to sustain the remarkable conversation about Cummings that has sprung up thanks to the convening year after year of the Cummings panels at the LCLC. Cummings remains an immensely popular, even a beloved poet, thanks in no small measure to the members of the EE Cummings Society. Because of their tireless work, EE Cummings sightings are now quite common in our digital age. Indeed, I feel comfortable announcing that the Cummings line, "I carry your heart with me, I carry it in my heart," may be the anthem of our Etsy COVID American meme moment. From Hannah and Her Sisters to Netflix serial killer series You, Cummings consistently serves as a touchstone to signal an attitude of one who is open to and searching for a kind of genuine post-tragic joy, and the stabilization of that vision of Cummings owes much to Huang-Tiller's shaping efforts. I began our conversation by asking Gillian the first question I like to ask all my guests. Just how did you first come to hear of the LCLC?
It was in my graduate school period. At Notre Dame, everybody was talking about this prestigious 20th century conference on literature and culture. So I went to Notre Dame in 1991. So that's where everybody went. So I just, it wasn't my dream to make the cut to attend this conference. So it was in the 1990s.
Mm-hmm. And so that was before your involvement in the EE Cummings Society.
That's right. My first conference that I attended at Louisville was 1999, and then that was about the time I was about to finish my dissertation. And then, why don't you go and then try Louisville? Some of my friends would say, and I say, okay. So I wrote a proposal, and that was my first paper on Cummings as well in 1998. It was accepted. It was hilarious because everybody said it was blind submissions. It was really challenging. So to make the cut is a great honor. So that was everybody's dream to make it to Louisville.
Great. Well, congratulations on making the cut. Do you remember what it was like to be here at Louisville in '98 and give your first paper at the conference?
It was at 98. I sent the proposal and then it was accepted. So my first one was in 1999.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I remembered that I was overwhelmed by the size and the presenters at the conference. And I saw lots of big names and keynote speakers that you admired, and they were really all be so close, to us. So for me, that was an amazing experience. The best conference ever that I attended at that point. Then it really lived up to its reputation and its fame. So that was my experience, and quite a few Notre Dame classmates were there as well. So they chair the sessions, and then so it's like, hey, it's just I'll go there. So it's almost like a second home to graduate students to be able to get together in Louisville. So at the time, I was not a faculty member, so we just look at a distance and suddenly feels very close to us. So that was an amazing experience, yes. And the topics were excellent.
Thanks for sharing that with us. So, how did you end up becoming a specialist in Cummings and then becoming a key member of the society?
Well, that's really a good question. Maybe I should say thanks to Louisville again. Um, I just first tried to participate with my different chapters on my dissertation, and then was not really moving toward Cummings per se because I was interested in women's studies as well. So I had a paper on Vincent Millay. Then I also had papers on Black writers, and that would be my first 3 years. And then I went into Asian American writers as well. And I thought that could help me develop the book into two areas. And then I somehow got into the Cummings Society through my director, Professor Jackie Brogan, and she actually organized American literature societies presentations, American Writers Society of American Writers presentation at the AOA. So she started me going to that conference. Then I discovered, oh, actually they had a EE Cummings Society, and then my focus would be mainly on EE Cummings, but also two areas. So then I entered the society, and then I realized nobody seemed to go to Louisville. So I said, I really love Louisville. Have you ever thought about taking the society from LA to Louisville? And then they say, well, good idea. If you would like to try, and then we will all go. So that's the incentive that I carry on because of my experience, very rewarding experience with the Louisville conference for the first 5 years. So 2005, and then I sent this proposal to represent our society. It was accepted. 2006, then we have people now coming to Louisville, and then I became the person who studies e-commerce from that time on. It become it became my focus, the only focus for quite a while. And so I would say my experience at Louisville, then an opportunity to get to know the EE Cummings Society, and with all these wonderful connections, then we are now have this opportunity to be almost like our second home there again after graduate school.
Great. Thanks for recounting that. I was really looking forward to talking to you because I ended up, when I was a graduate student, I thought I was going to focus on Romanticism forward, and I ended up focusing on Romanticism backward, largely because of the fit that I had with certain professors who I seemed to gel with. And so it just went back, and I ended up working with Stanley Fish was my dissertation
Ooh.
director. And he actually, I believe, came in 2006 and will be a guest on the podcast soon after you. But I had read The Enormous Room when I was an undergraduate and had really fallen in love with Cummings. Was there some experience for you that made you fall in love with Cummings?
Oh, yes. I would, pick up your thread on Professor Stanley Fish. He came to UVA to give a big talk that it was a very special speaker um, arrangement. And then actually Professor Fish, we took him to our local vineyard, and we actually had a very good gathering with him. So I think that it's fantastic to hear him talk. So I will look forward to that podcast. Um, about the, you know, refocus. Yeah, I share your experience myself. Norman Friedman in our society was just a great leader. He was almost the father figure for every scholar into Cummings. So I think that they would just good hands. That is one incentive for people want to stay in this field and love Cummings because of the encouragement of some great mentors, there. He published my first article on Cummings, so that definitely was another crucial incentive to stay on this track. And personally, Cummings, he's extraordinary poet and painter and writer that he attracted me so much because I could never figure him out. So I think a good writer, can allow us to run panels year in, year out in two different venues, AOA and Louisville. It speaks a lot about Cummings himself. He has a great language ability. He's so well read, but he is so modest in the way how he presents his knowledge. So unlike Eliot and Ezra Pound, they would really go back all the way to a classical period and then create a new sense of modernism through classical reference in juxtaposed with modern times. And Cummings seems to distill all of this and then into such a kind of innocent way of phrasing his lines. But then if you go deeper, the textuality, the form, and then the embedded allusion, it is so astounding that I never feel I really completely understand him, especially his experimental way of dancing his language. It's just mesmerizing. So I guess that's why all over the world, scholars were fascinated by him. And then that gives us a great opportunity to get together and then to study him from multiple directions. So I guess Enormous Room attracted me as well. I went there uh, in Lafayette, Marseille. I visited the Enormous Room. I followed where he went as much as I could. So he he I think he is an overlooked American voice, and then we have tried a lot of ways to bring him to the academic field. That so many people love him, so he was somehow perceived as a minor American voice in modern literature. But it depends how our criteria are to assess the value, the importance of a great writer. But he will, as you pointed out in your question, that it looks like he's going to continue to last. It's just that accessibility and also incredible depth that it's just so hard to describe. So I guess that's why it attracted me. It's just he fits everybody's category.
I was doing some preparation last night to get ready for this conversation, and in spending some time on YouTube, I was surprised that there's very little footage. In fact, I couldn't find any footage of Cummings. There is an audio recording of a 92nd Street Y poetry reading that he gave, I believe, in 1948, if I recall. And other than that, I struck out that here's a guy who died in 1962,
Yes.
and we've got virtually nothing, at least easily accessible. Or am I wrong?
Um, they're they're having a lot of recordings. I'm not sure they put on YouTube because the copyright things, especially Kempton recordings, has a a lot of Cummings' readings, especially after he never really, accept a regular job. So he would definitely need income because he's such a practitioner of individualism and independence. And then he would have to go out and read a lot. And then so there were a lot of recordings, but for some of the rights of property reasons, they will not just allow it to release to the public. But if you search for Campton recordings, the official channels for access to his recordings, they are available. Um, there was supposed to be a film um, produced on their life, a very short one, and I could not find it either. And I went to Houghton Library and to search, and nobody really could relocate it. But they said it was supposed to be a film. So yeah, your point is well taken.
And you are going to be in attendance for the 2022 conference coming up, and I was looking over that panel, and you're presenting. Can you give us a little taste of what you're going to be talking about in February 2022?
Okay, all right. That's not part of the original question. Yeah, it has been a little bit challenging after the pandemic to get the new voices to submit their proposals. And then so if that happened, I always just step in and then continue my own line of thought, and then to work on my uh, monographing process. And then what I'm going to talk about is that after last panel, that we switch our focus to eco-criticism. And it was a really a rewarding experience because not the session was successful, but I got this publisher's attention. They would like to have a book out on that topic. And so I think, well, there might be that I should continue. And then one of the things that this is why Cummings was so profound is that you have to really read without any kind of discouragement and go deep into his visual poetics, which means that how do we see this world? And then he emphasizes that you look at his poetry, you got to look. It's not just to see. You look. And when you look, and then you begin to grow. This is one line in one of his sonnets. And so a lot of previous comics critics would say, he just say the same thing, especially negative criticism from R.P. Blackmore, but they want more profound allusions and classical extensions to the knowledge, to the word, but they don't think of one simple thing, a tangible or something just by that immediate contact, it opens up the whole universe. That just one word flower can do, but for Cummings, no, it can. So then he encouraged a new way of seeing, not like what modernism simply, something like a Picasso, and then so everything is distorted and you put them back again. He did that. He has distorted vision. But then he wants you to see that it's also a mirror. So seeing is to look and then you grow. This growth is not about the poet, it's about the reader. So it's this interaction that the view of seeing that carries a lot of profound message that we need to rethink what he's trying to say and to do. But this word is like his curse or albatross that Cummings doesn't grow. But he says, look, you will grow. So I think this is a very unique phenomenon in our modern culture we tend to look and gaze and then never really see it's just you are looking at yourself. We are looking at ourselves. So I'm thinking that this phenomenon fits the whole concept of eco-criticism, which means that seeing is interperceiving. It is interpenetrating process going on. And ultimately, what we do, we see other people. It's really what we are ourselves are doing. And then the poem is only a medium toward that, toward the reflection back to ourselves. So it's not about the poet. It's about what we have this understanding what we are looking at, and then how the lines looking back at us, then that moment of contact, we all grow. So I consider that it's an eco-phenomenological process. And I joined both theories about this environmental concern, the interconnectedness with everything, but also ultimately we are really need to grow ourselves through Cummings's, particular way of perceiving things. So and I came to this understanding beginning in 2020 when Louisville, they were successful to offer this conference before we all, experience lockdowns. Yeah. So that's where I'm going with it. It's about the art of perceiving. And I hope that will open a little bit as to what poetry really means to us, what Cummings is trying to communicate with us. It's each other's own input into the poetry and how that comes back to us. That is growth, that where he is going with it. So the whole notion of, nobody else but myself, that is ultimate message, which is also the book that I have been trying to work out. And then through the examination of Cummings's reworking of the sonetry, which ultimately is the whole notion of love. And then we have to understand, to interact with other people. And then that's where the bridge that we needs to always carry on. So that would be my paper.
Great. And well explained, too, for an off-the-cuff answer. You will be here, and the Cummings Society will be here, and the responses that I'm getting back, even despite the persistence of COVID, is very encouraging. Other
Great.
societies are going to be here: the T.S. Eliot Society, the Virginia Woolf Society, the Durrell Society, and several others. In the past, is there interaction among the societies and the organizers, or is this a bridge, speaking of bridges, that maybe we could do some more effort to build?
Oh, definitely. I actually have to give out the praise to Michael Webster. Um, he actually is really our leader, our mentor at the EE Cummings Society after Norman Friedman passed on the mentor. And then so he has participated in different societies. So then when they showed up at the Cummings panel, that we got to get to know them. Actually, I got to know most people through Michael. And so we always interacted with Eliot Society and William Harmon from University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, uh, used to be president of Eliot Society. And then it was really interesting about the Louisville Conference and history is that they changed their names. I think I had a number down, but I think it's 2007 or 2008. They changed their name to the Louisville Conference. And then I think that Bill brought Eliot Society to Louisville for the first time. And then, so that was the time we started as well. So Michael knows Bill, and then so I got to know Bill, And then he would always pop up in our panels, and then we would go to his panels. So the interaction between Cummings and Eliot Society actually is pretty intimate in one way. Then later on, I really got to know Professor Harmon so well that I brought him and then another well-known poet, Robert Morgan, to our campus to give a talk, read their poetry. And then really, we enjoy each other so much. So Louisville Conference really creates this opportunity for us to bridge academic relationship, but also, literary relationship, friendship. So yeah, thanks to the Louisville Conference, we really appreciated this opportunity.
Well, the Eliot Society is hoping to do a seminar that will celebrate the wasteland at 100 with the 2022, so 1922 to 2022. And it does seem like Eliot and Cummings kind of need each other, particularly your spin on Cummings is in many ways the positive alternative to the wasteland. Or am I misreading that take on Cummings?
No, it's good. That's why, because Michael would go to Eliot Society to give papers because there's always some connection between Cummings. Well, see, they went all the way back to Harvard, and personally, between Cummings and Eliot, there was a little bit distance, but at the same time, when Cummings entered Harvard in 1911, and Eliot graduated. So they kind of like maybe had 1 year. They might involve each other on the stage. They had a theater on the stage, but I think their relationship got closer. Cummings wrote a paper, actually an essay on Eliot for Schofield Thayer. And Schofield Thayer and Eliot, they both were classmates at Harvard, so they're very close. And Schofield Thayer appreciate Eliot's, classical knowledge and their experimental modern poetry, but Cummings felt like that was really not new enough, didn't feel that was really kind of his view of philosophy of life, because for Cummings, everything must be alive. However, he was able to find something to say about Eliot as in many ways, there's something alive, and published that essay in the Dial in the early 1920s, around the same time. The Enormous Room came out in 1922, and Eliot's Wasteland came out in 1922. So they could be perceived as war poets, but he hasn't published his poetry yet. So Eliot's The Wasteland certainly, for Cummings, the equal, um, achievement is in his prose, The Enormous Room. And somehow he has some views about the wasteland. And maybe for some reason, I think he probably should really appreciate that. But somehow he wasn't able to know how to read it. So there's an interesting paper there about Cummings and Eliot, about how to appreciate this amazing poem, The Wasteland. So just because of that and other reasons, there's so much you can really work on the connection between Cummings and T.S. Eliot. So yeah.
Are you planning to retire? You mentioned that to me in our email correspondence. Who's going to step up when that happens?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. We hope that the pandemic really makes it difficult. Everybody in the literary society will realize that, because the funding, and then for graduate student to travel, and then other factors. And so it's really, we are in a period to find the the people who are now coming out, and then to have ability to go to the society to get to know people. So I don't, I cannot answer that question yet. And we sometimes you can still organize if that has to come to that. But yeah, we really hope that we will have new scholars. That's why we offer this panel call for papers, is to find scholars that might be having working on something in modern period, maybe take interest in comics, might have a book or something, so they would kind of like carry on. Um, but right now, just this particular year, it's really hard to answer that question for successors. Yeah.
Right. Do you ever, or maybe this is something we can do going forward, try to recruit or interest new members to join here at the Louisville conference, where you have lots of grad students and people who may not be society members, but now may be the time to get them? Do you think that that sort of outreach might help solve this problem?
Yeah, every effort is, is worth all the efforts. So, so that's kind of like tautological. But yeah, I think what we would need to do is that to get more publications on this writer, and Norton has been doing a good job and keep putting books out to get people interested, and also to look into the impact on popular media, and to open up possible range. I have to say is that the future direction would be both ways, academic, or open it up to what people like to do, to say about it. Yeah, we have been thinking about that. What will be the mission from this time period, and how we move forward? I think that would be every society's challenge as well, because uh, this year just not a year to forecast the future. Uh,
All right, that's very prudent comments on your part and well taken. Is there, in my questions to you in advance, I wondered why the contacts that I'm interacting with on the various societies often aren't the professors at flagship institutions. And is there some reason behind that?
My husband basically is in the same profession, and then he offers some of his insight. He's medievalist, and he said that there's no reward in it. And then basically that was not their expectation. They expect to do research, and then put out books, put out articles, and then to organize panels and conferences, and then be a person who leads a society. There's not much reward in it. It's a time-consuming job, and so I took his immediate response from there, but I truly actually don't really know. But I feel they put out the books and generate some issues for debate. Maybe we can sort of like arguing about that, so we can now organize conference and do something. So I guess both serve as needed purposes. So I I'm not sure why you don't see these kind of big universities and then with a come out and then take time, because honestly, we cannot thank University of Louisville enough for putting this year after year, now become almost half a century, because we we here run a very small medieval Renaissance conference. It takes a 5 people committee, just a lot of work, and for 2 3 days, it's a lot of dedication and a lot of time, effort to contribute to the academic field. I think it's very valuable to offer people who have not been there and a footing to enter the academic profession, but it's a lot of support from the academic institution, and then to think this is good both ways, for the academic university themselves, and then for the time that the professors have to sacrifice at the same time. But the contribution, the seeds they planted would be much more rewarded in the long run, for what kind of effort they put it in, especially was international. Actually, it's well known all over the world. People, come from everywhere to participate in this conference.
No, I appreciate that answer. It does seem like we are at a moment. It's often a joke among professors of English that we're always in crisis. The job market's always terrible, but a year like this makes us realize that that's not true, and that this year is really different, and that it has focused us to realize that things are going to change, and maybe we can kind of get ahead of that change and steer it better. And the Cummings Society and Cummings, as we're recognizing in this discussion, is perhaps well suited to make the voyage. He's somebody who can survive.
Well, thanks for thanks for that encouragement. Yeah, I that's why I have some faith that somebody will come up and then somebody will carry on, because the love for Cummings is natural. It's not because that I have to be in this particular society, that because that makes me feel I'm so much better. I don't think Cummings will give you any reader that sense of we would say inadequacy, because it's not easy to read Pound. So it's a today's confidence usually come from a level of connectedness. So I think Cummings has poems really connected to the general public. Um, if we talks about if we talk about the great divide between the popular and the serious, and then if it's the serious, I show, and then in my study over these many years, it's very serious, conscientious, careful work with the techniques and then with the form. But it's also so welcoming, so cheerful, so delightful, that it's not Cummings doesn't have a tragic vision. He has been there and he knows that. And we need much more positive for, feedback. And he offers that. So I feel, especially through this pandemic, it's so rewarding to read Cummings, because the love of nature, little things, the simple lines, it just carry with you. There's I carry, your heart, and then I carry it in my heart. It's kind of like you can just say it, and everybody can relate. So I think one of the reasons Cummings can survive is the movie you pointed out, Hannah and her sisters. It's only one line there, but then somewhere I've never traveled the gladly beyond. It's like I can simply say this line, but it's not easy. So the poet just say it, and everybody can relate. So it relates to all, different levels of readers. Um, that's why I don't know. I think that Auden says that poetry survives in its own valley. So I think it fits Cummings very well. But I love, deeper, with a lot of allusions, classical things myself too. But so I think it's like to survive. It's just you got to have for different things for different readers. Um, so I hope Cummings do survive. Thanks for that. Um, and I think if we can survive in your conference, that'll be good too.
Well, thanks so much for the conversation. My thanks again to Gillian Huang-Tiller, and thanks to you for listening. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe. Finally, I hope you will think about joining us at a future LCLC. For information, go to the LouisvilleConference.com. Thank you.